a day, I live in a dream. I live in a dream.
Welcome to Only Trying to Help, the podcast where we try to help you be helpful to other people. My name, as it always is Kate Watson, and I'm here with a familiar voice, friends. We're here with Jen. Jen's been on talking about her book, Lighthouse Conversations, Being a Beacon for Teens, her course on the same subject. Jen came on our parenting series to talk about parenting teens. Jen, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me back. I feel like it's always fun to come and talk to you because we always build on what we've talked about before. So I'm really happy to be back.
I'm happy you're back, and you make a good point. I also feel like we usually record an episode, and by the end, we've already thought of like the next episode that we want to do.
Yeah, definitely. And it was funny when I was driving home from work today, I was like, oh, I'm going to record a podcast. Remember how nervous I was the first time? And I was like, I had my little cheat sheet out and what I could say and what I was going to say and everything. And now I'm like in my PJs with my nice weighted blanket, like, yeah, let's do this.
Easy peasy this time around. We're so good at this point. We just wing it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about one of our previous conversations that we had recorded. I think it was the first one that we had recorded, and you were talking about your work with teens, your course about working with teens or living with teens, raising teens. And you made this awesome point, which I think is exactly what we should come back to. Mm-hmm. You were making the point about how people are often afraid to interfere. They might see a teenager who looks lonely or isolated or sad and feel like, I'd like to help that person, but it's not my place. Maybe I shouldn't get involved. They don't really know me. Can you just fill us in again about what you were saying about that? Because I think it's a good point.
Yeah, you're right. Well, when I was writing my book, I feel like I wanted it to be like a helpful tool for people who see a teen maybe crying on the street or something like that and feeling like, hey, I feel comfortable in my communication skills to go up to this person and say, hey, I see you. Is everything okay? Can I do something? Because like we talked about in that episode, that it takes a village to raise a teen, and it really does. And we all have a responsibility as like adults to help teens. And I think that's kind of what's missing in our society today is seeing each other, and seeing teens for what they are. And so I hoped my book could help someone feel comfortable to do that.
Well, I think it was one of the unexpected points of your book. Mm-hmm. And I say that because I know you, I knew you before you wrote the book, and I had this sense that you set out to write a book about communication skills, and then it kind of became something bigger about the way we see teenagers, the way we look out for each other in this world. And that message of it takes a village started to come through unexpectedly. And I think that it's been cool to watch you carry that message through in your work. And you and I got together to record this today and started thinking about that around like, aren't there times where maybe someone did kind of interfere or like they took that message of, I'm going to go help my fellow community member or my family member, and I'm going to get involved in some way, and maybe made a misstep or felt like, oh, perhaps I was sticking my nose in someone else's business, or it just didn't go the way they had expected. And it got us both thinking about some good examples of that. Did you want to share one that you had in mind?
Sure. Yeah. I was thinking about it. It's this word interference. Because that's what I was saying before, is if you see a teen crying or upset and stuff, like interfering there is good, because we show you that I care about you. I care enough to stop in my busy day and see how you are. And then I was recently kind of involved in something in between some friends about how we'll call Sally. I think you always use Sally, right? Yes.
I don't know why.
Well,
And Jen, even when I tell myself, don't use Sally, you know how it is like when you say don't think of something, suddenly that's all you can think of. My mind goes blank, and Sally's the only name I know.
yeah, I don't know. It just came up to me. But anyway, okay. So we'll say Sally, and then we can say some other like Philip. Sally and Philip, we've all three of us have been friends for a really long time, and long story short, but I had a kind of a communication or a visit with Sally, and Philip kind of interpreted some things in the situation and told me that I should maybe think about doing the same thing again with Sally. And one of the I don't know if that's very clear or not, but anyway, one of the things that I thought about was that, but Sally and I are really open and honest with each other. Like, why wouldn't she tell me this herself? And so anyway, then I ended up speaking with Sally about it. And long story short, it was a misinterpretation from Philip, because he decided to use his own like perspective and kind of like filter Sally and my relationship through his own glasses, and it turned out to be a wrong interpretation. And that is where I see like interference. Are we actually trying to help? And when we interfere, like, what's the purpose of our interfering? Does that make sense?
I think it does. I'll try to put it in a sentence or two. Essentially, you have two friends you've known a really long time. One of them got involved and delivered a message to you on behalf of the third friend, and really delivered the wrong message.
Yeah.
And I think the moral of this story is it's okay to care about your friends enough to get involved. We want you to be involved, but maybe check your assumptions, because assumptions can get us into a lot of trouble.
Yes. I can't remember who said this, if it was my dad or somebody else, but he said, assuming makes an ass out of you and me. I think I might have said that on the podcast before. I'm not sure. We'll have to go back and listen.
I don't know, but I have heard it before, and it's one you can easily remember. And I think that you're revealing to us that the same message we said in the earlier podcast still remains true. We still think it's a good idea to reach out to people, show them you care, try and be helpful. On this podcast, I can't imagine I'm ever going to send the message, don't be helpful to people. Right. This is the mission
definitely.
we're on. However, there's oftentimes a better way to do it and a not so good way to do it. And it seems like Philip made a little mistake by operating under some assumptions. And I could probably share an example myself. I was recently at a birthday party, and the person whose birthday party it was, he was, celebrating. He was doing what you do when it's your birthday. He was socializing with friends. He's having drinks. He's playing music. He's having a great time. And he's my friend. So he's the person I'm there to see. And I look over off to the corner in his house, and his girlfriend is kind of just hanging by herself. And I was like, well, that seems sort of odd. I don't know her as well, but we all know her. She's not a stranger. And my mind starts making assumptions. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. I start jumping to, she's upset and she needs help. And then I thought, well, wait, she may not be upset, or maybe she doesn't feel well, or maybe she ate something and she's sick to her stomach, or, maybe something terrible happened in her life.
Yeah.
Maybe she and my friend got in a fight earlier and they're arguing. And I'm going through all these assumptions in my head. Yeah. Maybe none of them are true.
Yeah. And
so I have to kind of pump my brakes a little bit before I run with a story. And all I did was go up to her and say, you doing okay? And she very quickly snapped back, And I thought, okay, she doesn't really want to talk about it, or she doesn't want to talk to me. But there was like a real quick, and I thought, you know what? She knows that I care. She knows that I noticed. And I gave her like a little wink and I said, I'm over there if you need me. Okay. And she went, that's okay. And that's where I left it.
Yeah.
And I feel good about that. I feel like I made my little effort without assumptions.
Yeah.
I opened the door. I let her know I'm here, ball's in your court. And I went back to the birthday party.
Well, exactly. And that's exactly what I was meaning also too with the teen example that we were talking about. I mean, I can have if I see a teen crying or something, I can have the assumption of it, oh, or if I see a teen at all, I can have the assumption of it, oh, must be a gang member, or oh, that must be a person that's like sitting there ready to steal my car. Or like I can have all these assumptions, or I can assume like, that person is just sitting there. I'm going to go and check if they're okay, just like you did. That is a good way because you're thinking about the other person's needs, right? Like, and I'm wondering if interfering is when you kind of have, like, you're thinking about your own needs, right? Like when I'm assuming and it must be that, like, what do I gain in interfering? Do I win something? Like, I'm just wondering if there's like a function to interfering that we're actually probably not even aware of when we do it.
I think that you're touching on something there. I think this is especially true when a person, I feel like we need a different word than interfere, because interfere had a negative connotation. Yeah. When a person tries to help, okay, and the help they're offering is not received, sometimes they can't let it go, right? Like let's retell my birthday story in a different way. Let's imagine that when I offered to my friend's girlfriend, hey, are you doing okay? Maybe she said, I'm fine. And I said, come on, talk to me. Come on, you can tell me what's wrong. Tell me what's wrong. And if I had pressed her, I think that's a sign that I just want to feel like the one who got you out of the corner.
Right. Yeah.
It's almost like I want it to be me. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like when before we started recording and stuff, I was thinking about like Philip in my example was doing like a really wonderful thing. Philip was showing empathy in like, I can understand this situation. So I empathize with that person, right? But if I don't check if it's like in agreement with what that other person is actually feeling, is it empathy then?
Well, yeah, we talk about, the difference between understanding versus the attempt at understanding. You and I both do a lot of work in the world of motivational interviewing and do trainings on motivational interviewing. And in that world, we talk about something called accurate empathy, which is like when you're not just trying to understand, but you're doing it quite well.
Yeah. Yeah. And like how do we do that? How do we know we're doing it quite well? Well, it's when like I'll say something and I'll get like feedback from the person and yeah, that's right, And when you're trying to help by basing your help on your assumptions, you don't get that feedback.
Yeah. And I wonder where the want to be, the wannabe helper, the Philip who wanted to be helpful, I wonder where it leaves him.
Yeah.
At the end of this scenario, like here's someone who probably thought he was doing the right thing and ultimately caused a little issue. And perhaps this is just the argument for really making sure that you're treading carefully when you're offering your help.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about it too. Like I haven't actually talked to Philip about it, which is kind of interesting because that's a conversation that I perhaps need to have. I'm not sure. I mean, I talked it out with Sally and got her perspective, and you know what I mean? Like I wonder maybe there's no reason to, maybe there is. I'm not sure. This is where it comes into like communication is hard, and like how would I be helping Philip by saying something? Like, am I being, I mean, that's what the whole podcast is about, is how do you help, and when do you help, and when is helping actually not helping and just leaving something?
Yeah. And the question you're asking about whether to circle back to Philip, who, I mean, I might be using strong words here, but arguably he caused a harm accidentally. It was an accident, but he caused a small harm.
Mhm.
And you're wondering, do I go back and have that talk with Philip? And here's the interesting thing. I watched you kind of wrestle with that idea. I saw your head kind of moving back and forth. And it's like you're wrestling with it, because on the one hand, maybe it would help Philip to have this feedback from you, but on the other hand, it would take some work on your part. And this is where we talk about topics like emotional labor, like the work we put in emotionally to be there for everybody. It does take a toll. And so I think it's reasonable that you want to make sure the investment of your emotional labor is going to pay off.
Yeah. Yeah, because in this particular example that I gave, the most important person for me to communicate with was Sally, because now I'm like, okay, yeah, I do have a good communication, open lines, we're transparent with each other. I was like, okay, I'm okay. And that's kind of why I'm like, do I have to like say anything to Philip then? Like, or can I just chalk it up to, he was only trying to help. Ching.
I'm starting to think, so we're recording this for season 9, but I feel like season 10 needs some fun bells and whistles and cool things. And I'm thinking for season 10, we need a sound effect every time someone says, only trying to help.
Yeah, totally.
I'm gonna work on that this summer, I think.
That sounds good.
Yeah. All right. So if we try to take a step back and offer the audience like some take home message, like, okay, so here's what we're trying to say. I'm going to make an attempt at this take home message, but Jen, I want you to fill in where I've missed some points. Okay.
Okay.
I think the take home message is, go ahead and stick your neck out there and offer yourself to people who seem like they may be in need. However, while you're doing that, check your assumptions, because you might be making up a story that isn't true, misinterpreting something you've heard and delivering it in a way that causes confusion, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Check your assumptions. I think also don't be pushy about it, because maybe that's a sign that you're not really trying to help. You're trying to be the helper because it feels good to be the helper.
Yeah.
But that's different than being helpful.
That's right.
And I guess the final message is, protect yourself from giving way too much emotional labor to things that maybe just won't pay off for all that you've given. What did I miss?
Nothing. I mean, the only thing I was thinking about is the check your reasons why you're doing it. And you kind of put that into number 3 there. It's like, why am I doing this? What do I gain from it? What's my motivation for interfering or trying to help in this particular way? Yeah, like basically think about things before you act.
Yeah, slow it down, give it some thought, but don't let that thinking stop you.
That's right.
It's just some preparation that you're doing. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with what is her name? Mel Robbins does like podcasts and books and stuff. And I like some of her material, not all of her material, but she has this message she's always pushing of don't think too much before you act. Like if you get the urge to do something, her message is you count down from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and do it. And I get where she's coming from.
Mhm.
Her premise is, if you think about it too much, you'll talk yourself out of it.
True.
You'll make up reasons not to do it. I get where she's coming from. We're saying maybe slow down a little when it comes to sensitive matters.
Yeah. I agree. And I can see myself like talking, that's kind of what it is. We always think like, should I not, should I? And then, yeah, okay, if you're going to think that long, you might get stuck. So we don't want to get stuck. That's an important message, I think. Don't think too much, but think.
Don't think, but think. Yeah. I think the way that I would word it is like, for things like, I need to go to the gym, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go to the gym.
Yes.
Fine. But things like, someone over there looks hurt. Let me approach this with care.
Yeah.
Let me give it more than 5 seconds of thought.
Yeah, give it 10.
Give it.
But depending on the severity, you have like 30 seconds.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, give it 10 seconds of thought. We're laughing, but that may be all it takes.
Yeah.
It may be that you just need 10 seconds to take a deep breath, say, am I operating under assumptions here? Am I doing this for me, or is it for the other person? You know what? All systems go. Let's get in there and try and be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. That was a really good summary of what we talked about.
It's what I do, Jen. I have to tell you before we close here. I went to this like leadership training, personal growth thing where we were all supposed to like find our purpose in life, and it was cool. And there were maybe like 100 of us in the room, and the facilitator asked everybody to write down your strengths, right? So we're all writing down what our strengths are. And the facilitator says, who would like to share? Well, of course, nobody wants to share because you feel like an asshole being like, well, here's what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And the room goes quiet, right? But since I am often in this person's shoes, I'm often the leader trying to get people to talk. My heart went out to him. I was like, all right, I'll throw my hand up. So I put my hand up and I said, well, one of my strengths is that I can take very complicated ideas and simplify them in like a sentence or a few words. And all 100 people look at me like, how do you do that? And I thought, yeah, they all probably wrote down things like, I'm a good dancer. But I do think that I'm very good at taking like a messy story and saying, so here's what that's about.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
It comes in handy on a podcast.
Definitely. Yes, and I agree with that. You are definitely good at your job and making things like easy to understand.
That's what I aim for. But thank you so much for joining me again. I mean, this is certainly not the last time we will do this. I imagine we will time and time again rejoin. Part of the fun of knowing you is that we just get these fun ideas and run with them, and it's stress-free now that we've done it so many times. So
yeah, we know what we're doing.
Take me in your arms. I don't want to miss a day without you. Let's stay young forever. There is nothing we can't do. And nothing can break us apart when we're together. Facing the sky, we know that we can fly on the wings of love. And we can climb on every mountain top. I never knew eternity till I met you. Since that day I live in a dream.